Waiting for YouTube. There we go. We are live. Welcome to Worldwide Slot Car Chat on Zoom, number 198. I'm your host, Greg Gal. The gang's all here with Mike and Ed and Leo and Dennis and Wayne and John and Lenny and Don and Phil and John and Dewan and Jeremy and Garth and other people. Let's talk slot cars. Does anybody have anything they'd like to show and tell? Raise your virtual hand so that I make sure to call on you. Mike's trying to raise his hand. Go ahead, Mike.
I was trying to raise my hand, yes.
You got it.
I got the new 512M.
Nice.
Oh. Gorgeous car. Has one problem. A non-flat chassis.
Oh.
Which I proved on Monday by finishing third out of 3.
Well, you know, there's a brand new product on the market.
Yeah. Not for this boy.
Where's Tony when you need him?
Yeah, really.
Come on, Tony. I know you've ordered 2 of them.
Can I borrow yours?
He's probably
it's gonna be my first actual attempt at the hot water trick. We'll see how it goes.
Oh, well, tip number 1, give it 1 minute after you turn off the burner, after it's boiling, wait a minute, 1 minute. And then when you
I've got a kettle that'll let me adjust the temperature, so.
Cool, do it right below boiling. Yeah. And then when you pour the water, make sure you don't pour it on the chassis, pour it on everything other than the chassis. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, make sure, you know, not only you're magneting down everything, but anything that should not be pulled down flat to the plate should be shimmed, because it'll soften and gravity will pull it down to the plate.
Yeah.
So shim up anything that needs to stay off the plate.
I know there's quite a good little video about that subject.
Did somebody do that recently?
Somebody.
Now, Michael, how badly twisted is it? Whereabouts is it twisted?
It's about 1.5 millimeters at the front. The left side is back down. And it got bad enough that it actually, I don't know whether the stress got relieved when I started racing it or what, but it didn't seem to me that it was that bad when I set it up. But as I raced it, it seemed to get worse. And it was bad enough that the wheels actually contacted the body, and I was going, why the heck is I getting this lag in acceleration on the straight? And then all of a sudden it takes off. Yeah. Well, apparently it was the chassis that was causing it. So, but it was the first race for it, so no big deal.
Yep.
Those are, Mike, the 512 is notorious for having the wheels too big. Did you use the stock wheels in the front?
Yeah, I did.
On mine,
they were clearing.
I have 3 of them, and I have smaller wheels on the front.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I first heard about that from the HRW guy when he got his way back when, a couple years ago.
Huh. I didn't see that vid, so cool. Yeah, well, thanks.
You could more or less accomplish the same thing with some zero grips, because those are usually pretty thin.
Yeah, or just turn them down and coat them.
Actually, not a zero grip problem. It's a body.
I know. I'm saying the zero grips are a smaller diameter than regular.
And they're narrower too. So.
Okay.
Alrighty, nice looking car as usual per slot it. Next up is Mr. Sampson. Go ahead, Dennis.
Hey, just a little thing today. Just something slightly different. A little while back, I purchased an old controller from a guy. Came out of the Bay Area of Northern California, and it looked interesting to me, so I bought it. It was going at what I considered a reasonable price at the time, and I bought it. And then I tried to find out what it was, and nobody knew. And we've been going back and forward and back and forward. Eventually, somebody said, "Oh, that's an early Micek controller," which is Yuri Micek is a guy out of the Czech Republic. So I found him on Facebook, and I sent him this photo, and I said, you know, I've got one of your old controllers. And he sent back to me and said, that's not one of mine. So I carried on looking around, and in the meantime, I've been using it, and it turns out it's a very nice controller. It works extremely well. And finally, another friend of mine, a racing friend of mine, took a couple of photographs, sent it to our friend Nestor, who lives in Portugal, and he posted the photos on Facebook in some or other Portuguese slot car racing page. And a guy out of the Ukraine came back today and said, that is an early Valico controller. Now, Valico is one of the Eastern European slot car manufacturers. I think they're out of Lithuania. However, we finally found out what it is, and I've been getting a whole lot of information from this fellow who's in Ukraine about the controller made in Latvia, who is advertised by a guy living in Portugal and belonging to a South African who happens to live in Southern California.
You can't get more worldwide than that, can you?
I was saying to my wife, it's absolutely wonderful. Mikhail Dolan, who's the guy in Ukraine who identified it, spent probably an hour back and forward on Facebook Messenger with me this afternoon. So I mean, it was late night for him already, and he's in Kyiv. I mean, that's not the safest of places anymore. But wonderful guy. He spent time, and he gave me some information about it and made some recommendations about things that I can do with it and so on. But I just thought I'd let you guys know about it, because I just thought it was a really fantastic episode and a fantastic example of international cooperation and friendship.
Is there anything particularly cool or fancy about that controller?
Not really. It's basically it's one of these where you can swap out these green sections here, which are the resistance network or resistance chip. It has a 10-position switch, rotary switch on it, this black thingy here, which is a choke that works quite well for very, very high-powered stuff. This is the sensitivity pot, the silver one. The one that's right on the front of the controller is for brakes. And then on the control unit itself, the blue little box is a relay that can be activated or non-activated by a switch that's on the back of the controller. And then I added in the voltmeter, and of course one of my little connection goodies to make sure that I don't blow it, because there's only one fuse on it. It's a very early controller. It was made in the late 90s, 99 or early 2000s. But it actually works very, very well. What I like about it most is that it has quite a short trigger stroke, and the trigger itself is quite close to the handle. So for my somewhat arthritic fingers these days, it actually is very comfortable and works really well. Plus, it seems to control brushless motors, and the brushless motor control chips. It controls them very well too. So I'm extremely happy with my purchase.
Now, Dennis, is that a Rusket handle or?
Yeah, well, this is a Palmer handle that was taken off the original Rusket handles. Rusket originally made that handle, and then when Palmer bought out everything that Rusket had and started building their turbos, they had tooling for that handle, and it's been made for years and years and years and years. And nowadays, people are slowly starting to move away from the Palmer handles and go to what is called the new DeFalco handle. I'm going to stop the share because I'm going to show you. This is the same controller, but it's now in a DeFalco handle. And the only real difference between them is that this one is somewhat longer at this end. That original screw was much closer to the bottom, so this part of the handle is longer than the Palmer one, but it's the same shape. The trigger is in the same position. The top end of the controller is very similar. The difference comes primarily in how everything's held inside, and so you can actually take the top cover of the controller right off without disturbing the way in which all the mechanicals are set inside the handle. So that works very nice. It makes for a very, very comfortable controller. But that's really the big difference is the extra length of the handle, which for those of us that have big hands, it's really quite nice because on a Palmer controller, my pinky finger is off the bottom normally when I drive. Anyway, so that's me for the day.
Very cool. So, out of curiosity, since I assume these are not being made anymore, they're just out there somewhere. But
yeah, they're not being made anymore. This one came from a fellow by the name of Mike O'Donnell, who lives up in the Bay Area, via Ian Douglas, who's one of the guys that quite a few of us know that races at Electric Dreams every now and then.
So out of curiosity, the choke that you mentioned, is that because there's also a sensitivity? So is that like an amp choke or a volt choke?
It's a voltage choke. It actually reduces the voltage that's applied to the track, and it works whenever the switch here, which controls the blast relay, whenever that is switched out, when it's switched up, then the blast relay doesn't work, and then you are limited across the entire stroke of the controller to whatever voltage or whatever voltage reduction you have here. It's about 0.2 of a volt per position on the multi-position switch. And then the other one with the black one here, that is pure sensitivity, which basically on this controller controls the start speed. So it controls what's happening right at the bottom of the stroke. And that was something else I learned today, because the Europeans talk about attack, and Michael Dolan was saying, remember, this is not an attack, this is a sensitivity. And I said, oh, what's the difference? Because I always thought they were the same thing. Turns out when they talk about attack, they talk more about softening the entire curve, making it more exponential, whereas a sensitivity only really adjusts the start speed of the controller. So it's now the attack is what some controllers like the SCP calls curve, or what the TrueSpeeds call curve, and the sensitivity is the start speed. Anyway, so that's the story. I've made a couple of these resistor networks for myself, because this was originally designed for use with Eurosport motors and wing car motors and things like that. So the resistances are way too low for the kind of sealed motors that we run these days. And so I've made some new ones that have higher resistances, but it unplugs, just a little section that plugs out of the controller, and you just if you don't drop it inside the controller, then you can just plug it back right in there. Turned over so you can see the underneath. It's tough when this. Oh, there we go. It's better. Okay. So this was just a little board that I had. That's actually a modified copy of a DeFalco board, but it's and this one, as you can see, it's 345 ohms. When I originally got the controller, the highest that I got was 140, and it meant that you had to drive this thing with the sensitivity turned way down to the bottom, and it was just way too much for me. Anyway, that's me.
Very cool. All righty, thank you, sir. And it looks like Lenny is ready to do something. What you got?
G'day. Just a quick show and tell. Picked one of these up the other day. The BRM, sorry, the River Slot Opel Cadet for our new class that we're bringing in next season. So we're looking forward to getting that going. And just by way of comparison, there's the.
Hold it closer to you. Bring
so
it
one's
closer.
BRM,
that's the BRM Cadet, which is
Yeah.
124 scale and the 136.
Yes.
Nice.
So yeah, big and little.
Yeah.
So that's it for me.
Yeah, I have those with the Alphas, but yeah. Nice.
And they're showing off the Nissan. No, not Nissan. 240Z.
The Datsun 240Z.
Datsun 240Z. Yeah.
Which is Nissan.
Depending on
Same company.
Those look cool, so I look forward to seeing those in more liveries. All righty, thank you, Lenny. And does anybody else have anything they want to show and tell, or should we move on? Oops, did not mean to do that. Did I see somebody?
Don't want to look at me too often.
Somebody wave their hand. Okay, so Jeremy, did you? Now you just messing with me, or did you have something you wanted to show? You're just messing with me. Okay, so I guess we're done with show and tell.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Serious.
Yeah.
I was muted. All right, so this is the latest project I've been working on. So I was making a rolling road. We've all seen these before, different ones, and getting aluminum roller and a foam roller. I know there's a couple out there that you can buy, but what I didn't like about the other brands that are out there is that when you put your car on it, the car is almost like at a 45-degree angle when the foam roller's way up. So I dropped everything as low as I could to get the road more similar to what it would actually be. And then the other thing I didn't like is that usually it's just voltage. So there's a voltage and an amp meter on it now.
Nice.
Yeah, it's getting there. Small things. I made an actual plug that's kind of universal. So I think it's like 5.2. You can use your own if you want to, or I'll probably just wind up including one. Originally, I had tried to get the design where you could drop the foam roller in or the metal roller, but it became a problem because the torque would throw the metal roller out of the thing. So started wiring it up. I got it just Wago nutted right now. I don't have it detailed. So then painting it, I shouldn't show this. Garth said that's horrible. Don't show it. But anyway, orange, it didn't come out quite the way I wanted to.
That's fine.
Yeah, I added these gates here because another thing I don't like is when power's cut, cars would fly off these things. So I put a gate here. I've got a few different gates that I'm working on. You can put the gate across the backside too if you really wanted to. I don't know. If your car's wobbling back and forth, you probably have other problems that you're trying to deal with. And I think that's it. Have it here. I don't know. We can stop the share. Let me stop that
also
share.
click one of those pictures to
So
zoom.
anyway, it's here, and obviously, for oiling your tires in, you would start going there, and it shows you the amps that's pulling. If I slow it down, it's going to pull more amps. There.
Yeah.
So that's the basics of it. I've got it so you can just take this out, put the foam roller in. I wound up going with this design for a backward and a forward one at the end because it was just a little easier to get everything together. And I don't know. I'm still working through the bugs, a few kinks here and there, but hopefully my plan was to get it where I could build it as a kit and then sell it cheaply. My primary focus with this is people who need these are usually they don't have their own track. So they want to, run the tires in, get your tires oiled up, but you're also usually you don't want to spend a ton of money. So trying to balance that right now because there's a lot of things other people have messaged me, hey, add this, add this, add this. It's like I can add everything you want, but you don't want to pay $300 for something. So so I'm just trying to keep it simple right now. Anyway,
That's pretty cool. Yeah, and even if you've got a track. So you don't necessarily want to put your car on the track to do those things on it. So yeah,
that's true. Like I spent like 6 hours here. I set it to the side and let it oil the tires in. And because that metal wheel spinning, the oil just keeps working in. It doesn't go flying out, at 3 volts. So it's been nice. But
so Jeremy, do those rollers just sit driven?
Oh no, the rollers are. I've taken aluminum roller here. And then I pressed bearings into it. I got a bearing press. I pressed bearings into it. So it's rolling on the bearings. Sometimes it'll actually roll on the steel stainless steel rod in there, like when it doesn't grip. So I mean, I'm having a few small problems that I have to work through, like with that.
But meaning that roller's not driven, right? It's strictly driven by the rear.
Yeah, it's driven by your rear tires. Yeah.
Have you thought about, and I'm just thinking as a simple maybe accessory, some sort of drop-in block for sandpaper?
Nope.
For True-In tires?
Nope. I have not thought about that.
Just
There's no way to do it because there's a gap here where your tires would fit. Like if you're just trying to break in the motor, you would just kind of hover over the back where it's a gap there. And I've got some foam coming that'll lift your car up, and then I'm gonna try to put foam on these gates so if your car does bounce around, it catches on foam instead of right into the little wood. But the wood is working for right now.
So,
but no, I haven't thought about sandpaper because you should really be using a tire truer. Because I mean, if you're gonna do sandpaper, that's a whole other thing.
All I know is
the
if you
foam
use that,
roller, what is the thinking behind the foam roller?
I guess from what I understand is that some guys use it to rub in or to oil in their tires with the foam. I don't know why. This is just what I was told. I was like, okay, let's take a look and see.
And is that like a paint roller or?
I don't want to give up my trade secrets, Dennis, but thank you.
No problem.
Let's just say I have a laser cutter that can cut foam.
Actually, in his powder room right now, you can't even spare a square. All those, you know what I mean?
All right, very cool. Looking forward to more information on that and ordering information, of course. John's holding up toilet paper. All right, Ed, you're the next on my screen. What would you like to show and tell or talk about?
Well, is there anybody in here that's more on the digital side and following the Software International thing on fuel consumption?
Yeah.
Other than me?
Yeah. Other than you?
And Mike? Probably just me and Mike.
Yeah, because I figured it wasn't worth talking about unless there's someone here that cares about that kind of stuff.
I mean, I think
it's worth talking about.
It's worth talking about, but what I would suggest is try to keep it on a higher level rather than a low technical level.
Oh, you don't want me to talk about that it's not 7 bits, but it's 8 bits?
No, not so much.
Well, the part that gets me is that I'm reading what these guys are saying, and if you go read the documentation from Slotted, it basically talks about the PC dongle interface as a 600 millisecond type of time frame exchange thing, and if you look at it, there's probably a factor of 20 difference between what's flying between the controller and the car and what's getting updated to the dongle. So when it comes to looking at what's going on from a speed point of view, there's a lot of lost data. I'm not quite sure how it might be in combined, but you're certainly not seeing every bit that's flying to the car as far as the speed value is concerned. And then the other thing that kind of came up where they were talking about, we need more ID numbers. That the issue with these systems, it's all about communication timing, and it's about the radio, and it's about the performance between the controller and the car, and what's left over, which won't be much, because if you look at Slotted, for every cycle, there's 3 channels of the radio that cycles through, and 2 of them are different frequencies for the car information for robustness. So it's like a completely different point of view relative to what's going on in the forum at the moment. But getting true consumption and you could monitor that. The data is flying out of the controller, and you could just pick it up and read it. I do that all day long, but the way that the dongle gets it, and the fact that it has to service all 20 IDs, so and each one of those is on a different frequency, and there's an overhead in a radio to changing frequencies. So there's just a whole different level of complication there that's not being discussed, but I don't think there's many people that would discuss it at that level.
and it's challenging because I'm kind of in the middle, right? I have have a very basic layman's kind of non-understanding of the real technical stuff that you understand. But I have a very in-depth understanding of everything else. So I'm just kind of like in the middle. But even I recognize that it can be a challenge to help people understand when they have more of a layman's understanding of just using the system and they want these things, right? Can't we do this, right? How do you explain to them either, yeah, technically you might be able to do something like that, but then you're giving up this stuff, or you're running the risk of this stuff, or it's not a good idea, or it's just, the return on investment is just not there. And when I saw what you were referencing, one of them asking, can't it be 30 cars or something like that? I'm like, how many events in the entire world use 20 cars to begin with? I mean, okay, let's pie in the sky, 30 cars. Okay, then what? That you're like you got a solution looking for a problem in that kind of situation.
Agree. So, yeah, that's what I saw too.
Yeah. I mean, I think if any development focus needs to happen, it's on stability and reliability and consistency and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Not friggin' 30 cars or even fuel at this point. I mean, the RMS is able to do fuel in a variety of ways. With whatever's already available, they don't need to mess with anything to do fuel in some way, and it can all be, gamed or not gamed depending on who's behind the trigger and who's behind the setup of the car and the settings in the program.
Right.
So
yeah,
it's like
because, to the case where Dennis was talking about his controller, if you look at the SCP-3, it has a minimum speed knob, but it also has a power trim knob. And the power trim knob, what you see with your ability to move the trigger quick enough, it's like 1 plus or minus 1 speed values that go between where depends. Let's assume you're going slower. Between that and full speed, you'll see 1 plus or minus 1 values in between there. And then when you turn that knob, the power trim knob, it could go up to like 3x that. You might see as many as 6, but again, it's kind of dependent on how quickly you can pull that throttle, back from a low position to a high position. Bless you, bud.
It's coughs.
Oh, coughs. Okay.
But thank you anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah. For this group, this stream, this thing that we do, high level.
Yeah.
Just in general. But yeah, it's an interesting discussion. So anybody out there who's hard, I would say if you're hardcore digital, if you're just playing with your kids at home, don't waste your time. But if you're one of those DISCA guys, what I mean when I say DISCA guy, hop on over to Slot Forum and look at some of that fuel consumption discussion and other oxygen discussions and other DISCA discussions. But you're probably already there, so you don't need to listen to me telling you that. All righty, I think we're ready to move on. What you got, Mr. Weber?
Okay, it's another quick hit. Hope the Corvette race car behind me belongs to a friend of mine that I have lunch with every now and then, and he races in a historic vintage type of situation pretty frequently. Harry Dinwiddie is his name. He lives in Maryville, which is over next to the mountains between Knoxville and the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And so I was had lunch with Harry and showed him some slot cars, and he was pretty enthusiastic about it. And I had one of the Owens Corning Corvette Scalextrics models and showed it to him. Oh yeah, he thought that was cool. So I've been looking, trying to find a body to try to build a kind of a facsimile of his own race car. And so I finally was able to locate one. And unfortunately, it's this one, which I really like. It's the Hines and Johnson car that ran at Le Mans and some other places, is the model. But there's not a whole lot. There's not much here. So it'll be a big project, cosmetically. So anyway, that's pretty much all I have. Okay.
You got a lot of work to do on that car. At least you're not having to cut the top off. The top's
Right,
already
yeah,
off.
exactly. It was already gone. Yeah, the top was already taken off.
Make some roll bars and repaint it, and stick a driver in there.
Actually, John, what year is the Corvette that he's racing?
73.
Oh, so it's got the round back though, doesn't it?
No, this one doesn't. It's an old car. It's been wrecked many times, and he keeps it in pretty good condition. But putting it back into the configuration that it was when it wasn't competitive, so to speak, he didn't do that. So he still has the it has the gills, the 73 gills on it, if you know what I mean. Which it's basically just one opening right behind the front wheel well, in the front fender, where the other 69 and 70 and 71s had something a little bit different.
Oh, that's right, because 74 was the first round back. You're right, because it was 2-piece in 74 and 1 in 75.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
my mistake. Sorry.
Sorry. It was the boat tail. It was split in two. In one of those years.
Yeah, 74. Right. Yeah.
I think they were using that Endura plastic or something like that.
That's right. Yeah, 73 they used it on the front, and then 74 they used it on both. That's right.
Okay. Anyway,
I'll pull the ass off him in about 20 minutes, I think.
What's that?
Lenny left his mic open.
Okay.
He's muted now. You're good, Lenny. All right. So thank you, Mr. Weber. And since it appears we're done with show and tell, I'm going to segue off of John's thing, because he talked about, basically introducing slot cars to a new person. And at our race on Monday night, there were two guys that had not raced with us before. One of them had raced because the track owner is a longtime friend. So he raced, at that guy's track, just not with us as a racing group. But another guy was one of the members' co-workers, and finally got convinced to come. And it was, I'm sure half of you guys have experienced this kind of thing. I'm just here to watch. I'm not gonna race with you guys. I don't got a car. I don't got a controller. No. I'm just here to watch. And the whole time I'm like, nope, you're here to race. You don't come here to spectate. This is not a spectator club, whatever you want to call it. So we're giving him shit and having fun. And he's the whole time he's like, nope, not going to do it. Nope. Well, foregone conclusion, by the end of the night, he's racing right alongside with us during the series race. We shoved him into the King of the Hill, which is an easy, you're on the track by yourself. You just run some laps, no competition, on the track at the same time. Hey, you're in the series race now. Just so you know, you're going to race these cars alongside us now. You'll be fine. By the end of the night, he was just having the best time. So expect him to come back to future races. So that's always nice when you get another guy, a newbie, coming to race, suckered him in to the addiction. So that's pretty much my club corner. I won't talk about the race itself because I'm so far behind because I missed so many races. I'm just there to tool around. But we're in club corner now, so if you have any...
I'm surprised that Garth and Jeremy haven't been touting the latest, what do they call it, jaded parts designs that they've been working on.
Is there
So you're
something
not ready to announce that to the world, or
other than the rolling road he was talking about earlier?
other than the rolling road? Yeah.
Uh-oh. Do we gotta guilt you guys into showing something?
We can, sorry. I didn't want to, let me get something to share. If somebody else wants to jump in, go ahead. Or Garth, if you want to say anything, go ahead.
I mean, if you've got some show and if you got something you want to show and tell, go ahead. We'll give you a second.
I wasn't prepared to. Let me give me a second here.
Garth's got his hand up. Are you ready to hit the share button on something, Garth?
Yeah.
It's going to be a race to see who gets the share
Hey,
going
Jeremy,
first.
how about if you narrate, okay? I got some photos and stuff.
Okay.
I got some of your Pioneer guides to go on my Yenko Stinger.
If they're terrible, blame Garth. If they're awesome, it's all me.
Yeah. And I'm sure they'll be great.
Have you guys had any of your 3D printed guides break the blade off yet?
Nobody's reported a break yet to me. One guy I did refund. It was like my first refund because he didn't like that the car, when you put the guide in, that the car dropped lower to the track. He wanted it to ride 5 millimeters higher. And I was like, oh, okay, I didn't prepare for that. I'm sorry. So I didn't want to keep arguing with him. So I was like, oh, okay, good enough.
That's
5 millimeters is quite a lot of shims.
I don't know. He messaged me on one of the slot forums or something too. It's like showing me pictures and like, how come he thinks that I should drop the guide or keep it way up like the standard cars ride out of the box. He thinks that people would really want that. I was like, dude, nobody wants that. Come on, be serious. All right.
All right, going brushless with the chassis, huh?
Yeah.
Take it away.
Go ahead, Garth. This is your
Well,
CAD part.
I'll do the photos. You do the narration, okay?
I don't know what I'm narrating.
Can you see the photo?
No,
Blue's
you
cool.
go ahead. Go narrate.
Blue is
I mean, it's your design, isn't it?
It's your design.
No, it's Jeremy's design. It got nothing to do with it.
So based off of Garth's pod here, it fits the motor. Go to the next slide. You go to the next slide.
Okay, hang on.
Uh-oh.
You got to zoom all the way back out.
I assume the green is where the chip will go. Blue is where the motor will go. Who is that? Kansas City Racing or something has a slot car motor now.
Yeah, there are a couple. Casey Racing is one, and
yeah.
Joe Slot from Germany is the other.
Okay.
that have slot car brushless motors available.
Right.
I got to tell you that both Jim Rose and Dennis contributed to some of the stuff on here. Dennis, the way the motor mounts in there with the screw holes in the slot. I didn't have a slot on it, and then Dennis suggested that we put some tungsten holes,
some little pockets for tungsten lights.
Yeah. So underneath the circuit board there's a spot for a tungsten slot.it thing. And
may I comment and suggest that might not be a good place for a circuit board, full stop, because of
no,
the
you
amount
may
of
not
vibration.
comment. Next question.
Okay. So
why not?
Because electronics don't like vibration.
What vibration? What kind of vibration are you talking about?
Any that comes from either the transmission, the motor, or the track surface.
So
where are you going to put it?
I was going to say, where are you going to put it?
Well, you can mount it on foam tape.
Yeah, of course it's going to be on foam tape. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll cross that road when we get to it. Next question.
Well, yeah, quite honestly, actual racing experience tells me that so far there's no problem whatsoever mounting one of those circuit boards on
yeah, even if you put it in the chassis, it's still going to be bouncing and vibrating. You know what I mean? It's still gonna be...
Yeah, but the chassis may have vibration isolation, or else the suspension system in relation to the motor pod, which is always subjected to everything that the track experience, the track
through the tires
into the system.
Yeah, we'll get there. Still early prototyping.
Yeah,
I like it. I think it looks great.
Top view. the circuit board is probably bigger than what it actually really is. I don't know what the real size is, but
I could provide you with sizes sometime. There are a couple of different ones with different sizes, but
that would be wonderful, Dennis.
sure, I'll get that going for you.
But one of the things that I did try to do was push the damn circuit board back so you could put it back in the area that the motor was at, so.
So is there any reason you can't put a circuit board in an existing slotted pod? Because a slotted pod only has magnet holes where you've put that chip.
Put it wherever you
Yeah,
want,
but
I
then you
guess.
can't put a brushless motor in. Well, you can, but I mean,
I got you. Yeah. Yeah.
But then it would be a slotted pod, Wayne.
Yeah.
Of course.
Eventually, I'm sure it'll be enough.
So that's for people in the UK, so, this is for US only.
All right, can I share?
There's the bottom. Go ahead, Jeremy.
You have to stop share.
I see slotted magnet pockets.
yes.
Weight pocket, yeah, the tungsten weights
Tungsten.
go in there.
Yeah, those are
right.
just specifically for tungsten, the tungsten thing.
I stopped your share. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Okay. So this is a prototype, ready to
I got
go,
photos of that.
and everything seems to be lining up perfectly.
That looks really nice.
Let's see, from the top. A bit of pillowing here on my print, but anyway, everything lines up the way it's supposed to.
There you go from the top. Now there,
From the top,
Dennis,
a lot of gaps here.
there's a gap there on purpose. Okay. Dennis, remember when you were telling me about you were worried that that I moved the sides of the motor pod in? I only moved the one side in to make it everything in the pod equidistant. To look at it down the car. Okay.
I think that's brilliant, because then it can go in the same hole as an inline pod without the little bump out for the Sidewinder stuff.
Well, everything that Jaded Parts does is brilliant. We don't do non-brilliant things.
I'm gonna get one over to one of the prototypes. Like, this is somewhat flexible. I don't know how long it will hold up under extreme conditions until we get actual one made, but
We
I'll get
need
one out to
we need a motor. Jeremy needs a motor.
I can't get them. They're out of stock, so I haven't been able to order the motor yet and ship to try it. Anyway, I've got one going to Jim. He'll be probably the first one to test it if he's got the parts.
That chassis looked like a slotted classic, like a 312 or something.
That was a 312 PB chassis. It's just what I had laying around to test.
When you think about how small that chassis actually is in real life, and then you see how small the pod looked in that chassis.
I know, it's adorable.
Yeah, it's adorable. There you go. Perfect word for it. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah,
so there's progress is coming. Those motors must be really tiny to fit like where it shows. So
yeah.
They are 15 millimeters diameter, and they're about 9 millimeters long total.
Yeah,
that's
amazing.
If you want to see what they look like in a regular pod, then try this. And this one has a 2 millimeter thick adapter plate.
Yeah.
So that it screws in. But I mean, you know what size those screw heads are, because it's 2 millimeter screw heads. Look at the size of them regarding, relative to the size of the motor.
Telling you, these motors, they're going to come into plastic slot car. They're not going to come into production ones, but they're coming into racing, I'm sure.
Yeah.
They're coming into what, sir?
I said they'll come into racing. They won't necessarily come into production off-the-shelf cars, but they will come into racing. And soon enough, the manufacturers like Scottit are going to have to accommodate them or fall behind.
Correct.
Just the benefits of the size, just to keep, the flexibility that they offer is.
Yeah, and once they can get around the electronics of it, get those things reliable, cheap, small enough, adaptable for digital, and or for oxygen and or for use with PWM controllers, all of those things. Once all of those problems have been worked out, then yeah.
On that subject, I understand that someone has attached a brushless ECOM to the outputs of a digital chip, and it worked for him.
I would expect it would, because really, basically, the ECOM is taking a voltage that's coming out, that's coming into it, and converting that into three-phase at certain frequencies.
Yes.
So yeah, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. That's just the space problem.
Well, that space problem is aided by the fact that the motor is so small already.
Yeah, true. You could basically turn the ECOM board 90 degrees and put it in the back behind the motor there. Just about.
Is it conceivable to have an inline configuration for those?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hang on a moment.
If the electronics are going to survive the vibration, why can't the ECOM be manufactured onto the motor?
Probably could, but right now we're using ECOMs and motors that come out of the
drone market place the motors.
Drone market, yeah. What the hell have I done with it? Oh, I thought I had one here. Sorry,
also,
guys.
I think the motors are only like $18 right now, right? But it's the
Yeah,
electronics.
$16 to $18. Yeah.
I mean, that's really cheap, but the problem is that chip you have. So if it was mounted on the motor, you'd have to take everything out and put everything back in. This way, you can just buy 3 motors and have the chip float around.
Yeah.
Yeah, I realize the flexibility, the considerations, and all that, but in terms of in terms of space,
there's an inline for you to do on. And again, what I did with this one is, again, I just machined up a little adapter plate, and it bolts in exactly where a regular FK130 would have done a Hawk or an Eagle or something like that. This is just a retro Can-Am car.
And Dennis, have you had to do much in the way of pushing armature shafts through these motors, or are they now coming double-ended shafts like that? Appears to have.
All of the motors that I've bought, the KC Racing motors, all come like this with double-ended shafts, and the Doslot motors from Germany all come already done with the shaft out of the correct side.
Those 2mm shafts.
2mm shafts, yes.
Do you have to program the board, or is it already pre-programmed and everything?
It's already pre-programmed. If it had to be programmed, I wouldn't have been in on this at all. I would have left it completely alone, because I really don't think that programming the boards is a good idea, or being able to program the boards, because it will just turn this whole thing into a can of worms.
Yes.
Right now, the only thing that we're struggling with is to get boards and motors to talk to each other when you have 4 different board manufacturers and a whole range of different motors. Right. Some of the boards are really good on the low speed motors. Some of the boards are okay on the high speed motors. Some of the boards don't start the high speed motors properly. Some of the boards limit the high speed motors top end, all kinds of little issues like that. Because as I say, there are 4 different board manufacturers right now.
Now,
Anyway.
just the main benefits are wear and tear. And then is there any other benefits besides that?
Lightweight.
Just lightweight and wear and tear.
Oh, you're losing grams and grams and grams of weight.
Compact too. They're much more compact.
Yeah, and the size. Mm-hmm.
So my only fear, and this is not legit, probably not real fear, is that if somebody does figure out how to program that board, you would never know. Like if the board is what's limiting the speed, and somebody figured out how to reprogram it, now they've got 10,000 more RPMs.
It's already done.
So
it's already done.
So you're gonna have to make it open
happening.
source and test everybody's board to start.
No, there are ways to test it, as Gio was saying. It's already been done because people are developing these boards. So in order to in order to develop the board, you have to flash some firmware into the board, right? But at the same time, they will be able to check that. And also at the same time, there are limits how far you can go, because you need particular pieces of electronics, particular components to deal with very high frequencies, and those look different to the ones that deal with low frequency. So there are going to be ways to check it.
Is there anybody checking them right now? Like how would you know if you held
almost nobody is using these things in competitive racing yet.
Okay.
First thing. Second thing, where they are being used in competitive racing, those classes have open motors anyway, so there's no need to, and nobody bothers to check, because you're running a Eurosport, so you can run an open specification motor, you can run an open specification board, because you're competing against $400 open specification permanent magnet motors anyway, right? So nobody's particularly worried in those classes. And at the low end of the market, we're not racing competitively yet, and even when we do, it'll be toy cars for bowling trophies. So it's not going to be something that that I think that people are going to get all twisted about and start to, there is so much performance available without fiddling anything that,
there's more power for everybody than anybody can really handle. So there's actually no point in chasing more.
Correct.
Courtney?
The way they do it in RC, Jeremy, is that the speed controller manufacturers install a flashing LED on the circuit board. And when the controller is in the stock configuration, that LED will flash. And if it's modified in any way in the firmware, it will no longer flash. So that's how they can identify in technical inspection that a stock controller is running in a stock way. It only needs to have the same kind of LED provision on the Econ boards, and then it will be relatively straightforward to technical inspect them just by the fact that the LED is lit. So it's a problem that that radio control has faced and resolved.
Yeah, well, hopefully they learn from that.
Well, and that's part of why it's been so exciting, is because a lot of us who were in radio control at one stage have seen what can be done and how beneficial it has all been for that kind of racing. And now we're getting this in slot cars, and hopefully people will just ask the RC racers, what did you do? And once they tell us, then we do the same.
And it does turn out to be cheaper, doesn't it? Even for RC racers. Yes, the equipment has a higher initial purchase cost, but in the long term, with regard to longevity, etc., it turns out cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we got more hands up. Did you guys, Lenny or Gio, want to contribute to this topic, or did you have something new you wanted to talk about?
Mine was just a short, what's it called, a club corner.
Okay, Lenny, you got a club corner too?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anybody else want to contribute to the brushless topic? I think that horse is beaten quite to the pulp for now. I'm sure we'll bring it up again in the future. Go ahead, Gio.
Yeah, so we raced the last night, and I don't know how many of you are aware, but over the weekend there was the 12 hours of Bathurst, so it's a GT3 race, and the cool thing about it is one of the cool things that I like. I mean, the track is fantastic, but one of the cool things that I really like is that they start at 6 o'clock in the morning, so in complete darkness. So I decided for yesterday night that the first race for us will be in darkness. Usually we race we start with the full lit and then we progress towards darkness, but in this case we did it the other way around. anyway, so we started with the practice. Also was like a full night, so we had like seven people on the track. It could have been kind of a lot of crashes, which actually did not really happen. So people kind of behaved properly. So these are the usual kind of suspects. So we did like a practice session. So instead of going completely kind of dark straight away, we did with just one light on, so like semi-dusk or sunset kind of settings. Actually, the sun was setting outside for real, so we're kind of used some of that light. And so basically lights, this was the qualify, so lights were start to basically kind of getting off. And more or less, I mean, was it just usual stuff? I mean, I kind of managed to qualify on top, and then the other two, I mean, Jan and Alex were just behind, and then the other four were just battling for a spot. So race one then was like, you know, Bathurst starting completely dark. So I qualified first, so I was starting from pole position, and at the end of the race was not really kind of for me kind of a great race, but was good for Alex, so I managed to get through. Jan like was going pretty solid at the beginning, but then his car had some kind of technical problem, so I had to take off the track, but still kind of managed 111 laps. So I decided for race two, again, kind of completely dark. So now the light even outside, the natural light was even fading even more. And this is kind of the grid. And this time my race was okay. Jan and Alex were just close behind. And I think, yeah, so I just managed to crash all once, which is good. Out of 14 minutes of race. And then for race basically 3 and 4, then we just went with the one light inside the garage on, so like basically getting dusk and kind of getting lighter. So this is the second grid, and race results. Alex went pretty close, was basically on the same lap. He just had a bit more crash than I had. Otherwise, it would have been really neck and neck. It was just half a lap difference between the two of us. So you cannot ask for closer racing. I think here good news, or kind of news to kind of bring up, is that our newest guy, James, so with still running with the silver profile, so which is like 85% of the full power, he managed a 3rd place, which is not bad. So he's really getting good, actually, I have to say. So, and I don't know what the heck is happening. I mean, I have like, and then this is like the 4th race. We go in reverse grid, and so I was at the back down there, and final results. So I just kind of managed again to kind of go around the people, and kind of then again like saving fuel, which basically with an RCS02 still works. So the lower you go, I mean, if you don't go crazy, the fuel consumption can go down a bit. And something interesting here that happens is that Combi, with this kind of beaten up M6, managed 2nd place, and Alex on a 3rd. So again, pretty close racing. There is a bit of mix with the newcomers kind of going up. And I believe I hope that next week I will have time to do a show and tell from Combi. So he has some kind of cars that he built for drag racing. So I think 124. So it's kind of a bit of kit bashing that he has now. And I will show, because some of them are really cool. So I will show that from him next week. And with this, I will say goodbye because I have a meeting. Bye. Thanks, guys. See you later.
Gio. Are you coming back, Gio? Are you coming back after the chat?
Maybe.
Do that if you can.
I'm sure some of these guys will still be here.
I know. See you guys.
And kind of like what Gio was saying, the new guy, doing well. Like I mentioned, the new guy on Monday. Of course, he started out like anybody who also doesn't race a lot of slot cars. He was, crashing on every corner. He gave him some tips and just kind of. But I'll tell you what, by the end of the night, he was doing pretty good. So, yeah, he's either a natural or quick learner or whatever. I'm pretty sure he'll be back. We'll see. All right, Lenny, you ready?
Yeah.
Take it away. Oh, he wasn't ready.
It's coming. It's coming.
It's coming. There he is.
There he is. Okay. So last Saturday we ran their annual race to remember this fella, Big Mick. And we had 9 worthies turn up for that one, including me. So we're down a bit on entries, but that's the way it goes, I guess. So this fella here turned up to do the welcoming stuff. It's Larry Perkins, a well-known Australian racing driver. Did Formula One for BRM back in the 70s, and then came back home and won a few Bathursts, 1000s. But yeah, it's a cardboard cutout that a friend of mine gave me many years ago. So he does the welcoming duties every big race we have. There's all the trophies and photo of Mick we have hanging on the wall there. Okay, first race of the day, we ran the 24 scale BRM Group 2s. And Steve, one of our regulars here, he's mad keen on slot car racing. He races all over the place. I think he races about 4 times a week, but he comes to my place every week on a Tuesday night. And he won the first race. I should add that the overall result for the day is counted over 3 races, and with the point score tallying right throughout the day. Anyway, back to this. Steve won the race from Jeff, very close result there, and I trailed home with my Opel Kadett. The first 2 ran Alpha GTMs, by the way. And then Jason was in the hunt for a long time. He ran a Ford Escort, I believe. And then there's the rest of the boys going back down to Andrew G with his 2002 BMW. There's the podium.
Hold on. So go back.
Right.
So the top 2 were so close that your program didn't even show a gap to leader for second.
No. That's race coordinator version 9 I'm running.
Is that a bug or something?
Seconds, these gaps.
Don't know. We don't get that too caught up in it. We just enjoy the racing. So
sure, it's less than a tenth between the two. Less than a tenth of a lap.
Very close. That's
Very
over 20
close.
minutes of racing too, by the way.
Wow.
So that's 4 5-minute heats.
Yeah, that's racing.
So it was very competitive there, and I trailed off by about a lap and a half. So it was pretty close.
In it. Sorry, go ahead.
That's all right, mate. So there's the podium for that. So there's Steve's Alfa Romeo, Jeff's Alfa Romeo. It's very quick, but Jeff has a bit of a problem on red lane. That's his bogey lane. And there's me with my little yellow and black Opel Kadett in 3rd place for that one. So next up, we ran the classic touring car. So that's for Trans Am type cars or 1970s up to 1990s touring cars. So as I said, Mustangs, Camaros, Monaros, if you can get hold of one of those for a Holden. But Steve won that one again. He had a very good day on Saturday. And then Jeff finished second again. So they were the top 2 throughout the day. And then for change of pace, we had Norm come in 3rd place. So their first 2 had Ford Falcon hardtops. And then Norm came home with a Camaro. So there's the podium for that. That's an Australian-built car. It looks very much like a Torino for our American friends. I think they all had metal chassis under them. So we allow modifications to this class. So they can run a pressed metal chassis under it. I'll get some photos of one day and put it up for a show and tell. And the final race of the day was for the Revo slot. It says Classic Sports and GT. I put the wrong program up, but it didn't matter. It's the same race time. So that was for Revo slot GT2, GD1s and LMPs all mixed in together. And Norm got up to win that one. He used the Ferrari 333 SP. And then second and third, with a couple of my regular guys, they're normally lurking around just off the podium, but they got up to the podium this time around. And they were using the Marcos GTs, Marcos 600s, I think they're called. So there's the third race podium. So there's Norm's Ferrari. Norm paints all his own cars. As soon as he gets the car, he drops it into the paint stripper or whatever you want to use, and then repaints his cars for his own liveries. And
Is that a Revo?
yeah, they're all Revos. They're all Revo slots. So there's Jason's Marcos and there's Callum's Marcos. I was really pleased with that result because these three guys are always lurking around just off the podium, but this time they got a win. And there's the point score over the day. So you got 20 points for a win, 18 for a second. So Steve managed to accumulate 54 points out of 60. And then Jeff got 51. Norm came in with 50. Jason at 47, me at 41. I had a bit of a dive in the classic touring car race. I ran a classic chassis Camaro. I didn't do very well. And then Callum, and then a couple of our visitors, Paul, who comes in from other clubs, and John. John was one of Mick's teammates. He races somewhere else now, but he turns up to this event every year and wears high vis just like Mick did. And then there's Andrew, our perennial runner-up from the other end, winner from the other end, but he loves doing it, and we're going to help him out and get him a bit faster this year, I hope. So there's Norm, who picked up third place. There's the with his trophy for third place overall on the day. He was very happy with that. Then Jeff wasn't coming up until Friday night, and then Steve talked him into coming along, and he got a trophy out of it. For a bit of a surprise for him. And there's their overall winner, Steve, with his Hawaiian shirts. He loves wearing those things on special occasions. So he got his first place trophy. And he also got the perpetual trophy. So his name will go onto that, and that'll hang around in the shed for a year with his name on it. Nice to see another name on there besides Dennis Miller and me. Dennis won the previous three, but he wasn't able to attend. So a bit unfortunate for him, but happy thing for Steve. Then just quickly, Tuesday night we ran one of our handicap nights. So we ran Group C's. What we do is we run, instead of running 3 12-minute races, we ran one 36-minute race with over 3 legs. And what we do is I'll go back. We apply a handicap bonus score to everybody. So the fastest guy on the overall, he gets no bonus points, and then it goes down to the slowest guy who gets plenty of bonus points. So that's the overall scores there. So young Andrew came back and won the race quite convincingly. From me, Andrew runs a XJR10 slot Jag. I run a 962 Porsche. And Ian, from memory, was running a Lancia LC2 of some description. And then Jason not far behind him, and then the rest of them. Okay, this is how the spreadsheet, how I work out the handicaps. So what happens, I go through the last 3 races, find their best scores. That goes over here. And then we work out the lap differences from fastest to slowest. Andrew's the fastest, so he gets nothing. And Norm, we only count on whole laps, not on partial laps. So Norm had 103 as well from his highest score, so he got nothing. So they were the scratch boys. And then everybody else after that, Jason finished 4 laps down on the best score, 2 laps down for me, blah, and so on. So Andrew G was 14 laps down on the highest score, from his highest score to the best highest score. So then what we do is we multiply it by 3, because that's taken off the previous 12-minute races to get the additional laps over 36. So in this case, once again, Andrew got nothing. Jason got 12 bonus laps. I got 6 bonus laps, and so on. Andrew got 42, and so on and so on. So once we run the scratch race, I then add in the bonus laps. So they get calculated automatically from adding this to this. So the overall race score gets added to the bonus laps, and we come up with these scores. This time, Andrew came out on top despite starting with no bonus laps, and then Jason finished second on 3:09, me on 3:08, and Andrew G picked up fourth place. He was our slowest guy, so he picked up fourth place. So it's relatively close. It's not a perfect way of doing a handicap, but it's the best way we can think of it. And nobody can cheat because you go back on your last three events, and they could be over 4 months since we ran out over a 4 month period where we ran the 3 races. So yeah, so hopefully that makes sense to everybody. And that's it for me. I'll get out your way.
And it did change the results a little bit. Like a couple of the guys went up a bit, and
yeah. Well, last time we ran it, Andrew won. Andrew G won it, not Andrew S. So yeah, so the boys enjoy it. There's 1 or 2 that don't like it, so they don't come. But the rest seem to enjoy it, and we do progress scores through the night. So we add in the last the accumulating total throughout the night. So it's all good fun. We don't take it too seriously.
Yeah, it's all about fun.
We only have sheep stations once a month.
One thing we used to do with handicaps every now and then, just to make it different. If you have like you work out the handicap for each guy for over a single 3-minute heat, and then you actually stage everybody on the track by adding the laps and staging the car around to where it is, and then you run, basically trying to get, if you run to your handicap, everybody's going to cross the line at the same time at the end of 3 minutes. And
yeah, we
they
used
all
to
of a
do
sudden
that.
get a feel for how much handicap there is, and the pressure that's on you to get that done is really quite something.
Yeah, we used to do that. We used to have qualifying races and then seed everybody according to that, and we decide on the time penalty. Everybody start on the start finish line. So one guy go at 0, and then someone to go at 10, someone go at 15, someone go at 20. But people used to fox through the 3-minute qualifying session. So they drive slowly and get a good time.
Yeah, well, you see
happened
what
to me one night.
Yeah, we were running a single class every week. We had really good records and really good understanding of how fast each guy was with that particular car on those particular tracks, and so our handicaps were worked out over a couple of month period, and you weren't looking, so you didn't have some guy who was trying to sandbag it. Anyway,
yeah, that's basically what we're doing here. But rather than applying a time penalty to each driver, we're just applying bonus laps for the slower guys, and the faster guys are going to make up that difference.
Yep. All right, good stuff. And we've got more hands up. Wayne, what would you got? What would you like to talk about?
Well, I went to an event this last weekend, and I've got a few photographs that I can show you. Okay, so my photo viewer never pops up on the share options. So if I do that,
something's coming. Yeah, now we're seeing your whole screen, I think.
Yeah. Oh, that's the wrong slide to begin with. Let me pause and do that. Go ahead, Mike. Let me get this sorted.
Go ahead, Mike.
I have to reset my stopwatch now.
Dawn, you're very kind. You have to set a calendar.
You're a bad man.
Mike, go ahead.
Well, I had a bad day on my race this week, and I raced 2 new cars and ended up DFL both times. One of them, well, mostly due to my own mistakes on that. I had a lot of trouble with the Ferrari in the race that we had we had two Ferrari 512s and an NSR Porsche 917, and the Porsche took it over the Slottits, which was surprising. But at any rate, that's what it was. And then the other one, I had a new Cartrix Lotus 16, and that one was self-inflicted because I forgot to correct the fuel differences, and I had a car with a really slow motor, and I end up using twice as much fuel as everybody else. And but I actually did fairly well considering. I finished third, but I wasn't far off, so I was pretty surprised about that. But it was a good race anyway, because it seesawed back and forth quite a bit because of the fuel situation. I could pull out a lead. I couldn't pass anybody really well, but I could stay on. I think I only had one off the entire 150 laps, and one of those was inflicted by someone else. Or I had two, and one was inflicted by someone else. So, but I had to stop for fuel all the time. So, that was 2 laps down for the fuel. And then I would go back, and then they would come in for fuel later on. And I could only make up about a lap and a half. I couldn't get, because my car wasn't fast enough to do that. And of course, with a motor that's not so great, I was on the throttle more. So I used more fuel as a result of it. So it made it even worse. Anyway, I ended up third, but it was okay. We still had fun. So that's all for me.
And fun is what it's all about.
Yep.
All right, Wayne, you ready?
I think so.
Try again.
It's going to be another screen.
Go ahead, Duan.
Whole screen thing. There we go. This should work.
Oh yeah, the rally.
So you want to hear about it then?
Yeah.
Okay, I just need to move the pain of people. Yeah, it was the first round of the 2024 newly relaunched Slot Rally GB at my local last weekend, and a week before they'd said that they would open the place for anyone that wanted to come along and borrow cars. And so I took my son along, and they were not prepared for that in any shape, and actually got involved in helping to build some of the stages. But that motivated me enough to come home and go to the cupboard and see whether we got any rally cars, which it appeared that we hadn't. So we tried to make something with what we got around the house into a rally car, and we succeeded in doing that. I've got some video footage on that matter on my YouTube channel that, and I've got some more. I'm a bit delayed, a bit late with the next installment of that. This is a photograph of the inside of the venue. You've probably seen the venue before. There's a large wood track down there that's grey in colour. And on top of that, there are 2 stages that are made out of Ninco sectional plastic, both of which contain some of that bumpy sand track, or whatever it's called. There's another stage over there which is called Icy Hills, I think. There's a stage in the back room which is through this walkway here, and then there are 2 stages elsewhere in the building, because this venue is now full. And so we had 6 circuits, which we managed to make 7 stages out of by reversing the direction on one of them. So I'll take you briefly through the stages. There's another view of the whole venue, and you can see the icy stage a little easier there. But one of these was a roundy stage. That was that one over there. And it was very, very dangerous in this area here, because if you weren't very careful about getting over that hill, you could drop your car down the gap there in between the track and onto the floor, which was done, but it not very many. And then we had these fantastic Ninco arch style lap counting and timing devices that I've personally never seen before. They work very, very well. Nice little thing. Apparently unobtainium nowadays, but worth picking up if you can ever find one. And this, I don't know how many laps we did on this, but this circuit basically contained one crossover. It was in this downhill section here, and you went around. This would only time you on one of the two lanes. So you were doing effectively 2 times around to score 1 lap. And I think we did that several times. This stage was quite different because this was a there and back stage with a loop on the end. The timing was on the end of this loop. Difficult to see, but it was there. And then you came around what was effectively like circuit racing, and then off up this steep hill. And these hills posed quite a challenge for the cars because if you don't crest the hills with enough momentum, you'll belly out the center of the car and find yourself teetering there with the guide out the slot and the rear wheels in the air, which was a thing that required marshalling. Another thing that was happening was sometimes when people were coming back this direction, they would hit the throttle in this little straight. I saw cars take air and land, sometimes in the slot, but sometimes not. And all of this is bumpy, 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 bumpy. And it's quite a challenge to do it perfectly first time, because you only get one shot at these stages. There was a little bit of open practice before the event began, but that's 2 of the stages. And interestingly, the way that they were being powered was from the wood track. So you took your controller and you plugged into the socket that was there for the wood track. And this particular layout was running on the yellow lane, and the other layout was running on, I think it was the green lane, but it doesn't matter. There was another device like this, and it's basically a chassis with a slotted motor pod, a guide on it, and it's picking up the power that you apply to these rails and transferring it over to these tracks, which is a very, very clever little way of doing the implementation of the stages. Icy Hills. This particular layout ran in the opposite direction to that car that's resting there. That car's obviously not in action at this time. So it was all left-handers, left, 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 left. And as you can see over there, typically 1 crossover. So 2 times around equated to 1 lap. And as it turned out, this one stage was the single longest stage of all the stages. Now, the way that the rallying works, if you're familiar with it, that if you don't get through the stage in an allotted time, then you will be given a bogey time, that you will be given that allotted time. And it was 2 minutes maximum per stage. So if you had a broken car and you didn't attempt to stage, you would be given a time of 2 minutes, nominal time. And this stage took over 1.5 minutes for most, no, I'm going to say typically 1.5 minutes, sometimes under, for most cars to complete, whereas most of the rest of the stages were in the vicinity of a minute to do. But this one was the long one. It threw up some particular challenges because it's very, very narrow. I don't actually know whether it's wood or whether it's plastic sectional that's been narrowed or what the origins of the track is, but it was narrow and it had angles involved. There was nearly no way you could hit the throttle apart from this single back straight. And it was effectively just hold the controller and watch the car go around until you got back round to that back straight for most people, most of the time. Now, this is a rally stage that's permanently built in the back room of the club. It's open to anyone that wants to play with it whenever there's an event on. And they call this one Forest Quarry. That's the left side of it. That's the right side of it. And this you can run in either direction because there's a little throw switch, a little toggle switch next to the controller input there. And we did run this in both directions, both uphill and downhill. A very, very nice wood stage with it wraps around the driver. So the driver is the only person that's really going into the center. And what that means is that you can actually marshal yourself if you fall off sometimes. And the worst crash you can have on there, oh, it looks like I've hit a few buttons. The worst crash you can have on there is one on these wiggly straights, because if you fall off there, you tend to find your car going down and even making it all the way to the floor if you're not careful. But yeah, that's another one of the stages we ran that both directions. Think Scalextric, which you may also know as Magnetic Racing, same company, same people, same place. brought one of their layouts up to provide us with one of their stages. Probably, certainly the biggest stage, all made in Scalextric Sport Track, very, very detailed scenery, all not temporary, all temporary. So, all of this was erected the day before and taken down on the Sunday evening. But there's I've got quite a few pictures of this because it was a complex stage, and there's lots of nice magnetic racing product on display all around it. And yes, we did race around the back of those shipping containers, through the middle of those shipping containers, and this was the far end of the track. And you couldn't see your car when you went through there, so you had to judge your speed very, very carefully before you went through there. The worst thing you can do, obviously, is deslotting, because that loses you loads and loads of time, and you get one shot at every stage, and all stage times are cumulative, add together to your final result. This may actually be a picture of my car, I'm not sure, but my car was all white, and that's an all white car, so it's a possibility that that is actually my car, not taken by me. The drivers were at this far end. The timing ran from this section here, and this was the start just there. And you basically did, this is another layout with one crossover, so you did 2 laps to score a lap. And I think you went round it twice, so effectively each lane twice to do a whole lap, to do a whole stage. It was one of the quicker stages, even though one of the largest. And I've got quite a few photographs of this because it's quite photogenic. Yeah, managed to capture a car as it came past. Bit of speed in that picture, quite like that one. And this is one of the pieces of scenery, probably been seen many times before, but there it is again. And some of the stuff that was lying around around the outside, crashed cars and broken stuff. This was another stage, one of the shortest. It was called Farmyard. Yeah, wood track based. This one threw up a particular problem for my car because, as it turned out, my guide was too deep for this, and I was allowed to run away, take my Dremel to the car, and shallow my guide, which allowed me to pick up power reliably from this layout. It was a layout that we couldn't practice with before it was live. Much like the Think Scalextric one, which you can see in the back corner over there. This was in a separate room upstairs in the building, like I said, and these were closed for practice until they were staged live. And that is my car, because I recognize this. This is my son, who's going to be 10 next week, who competed and acquitted himself relatively well. And we both entered that one car. Now, the way the event is formatted is that there are 3 categories: classic cars, 80s, 90s rally cars, and modern cars. Now, we had a car in the modern category, but most people were carrying their maximum quota of 2 entries per category. So most people had 6 cars with them, 2 classics, 2 80s, 90s, and 2 moderns. And when a driver went to a stage, they would run through the stage with all 6 of their cars, and then we would change driver. And the event ran in a way that you were put into a group of individuals. In our case, it was a group of 6. I'm not sure that they were all 6, but there were some groups of 5. I think there might have been 3, possibly 4 groups. But the way that most people do this is they take a few cars and run their quickest cars last. So they run their slower cars or less competitive cars in the form of practice, if you like. And then once they've worked out how they need to drive the stage, then they'll get their best cars out. And of course, myself and my son only having 1 car, we only had 1 go at every stage, which was a little bit of a disadvantage. And I soon learned that my tyre choice, although it was excellent for the Ninco and the plastic tracks, and it was pretty good on the Scalextric track, it was actually a pretty poor tyre choice for the wood tracks. And that meant that pretty soon I realised that the only way I was going to do any good at all in terms of the result was by having no D slots at all. So I pretty soon, although we started on the farmyard, that's where I discovered my lack of traction from the tires that I'd chosen, and decided that that was going to be my strategy. And it worked to a large extent. I can remember having 2 D slots total in all the stages, but we'll come to the results in a few minutes. The reason I've picked this car out is because staffslotcars.co.uk are one of the championship sponsors, and Steve from Staffs was there with his son and a bunch of cars. These are just beauty shots taken in the stages. I've got a number of these. This one was underneath the bridge on the icy stage. You can see how close together those rails are, those slots are, how narrow it all is. And if you didn't go quickly enough, you could hang the back wheels on the inside of the corner and get into trouble just as much as if you hung the tail out, you would get into trouble. So it's quite a difficult stage. Turned out to be the one that cost me most.
I bet that icy stage was like Carrera Go.
It looks like it might be. Yeah, it looks like it might be. There it is again. But all copper taped. It was utterly filthy. The opportunity that I had to run on this, I mean, they opened the venue with the 4 stages that are downstairs to anyone that wanted to pay a small contributory fee on Friday night, the night before the event. And because I've got a car that has never basically done anything, it's only just been built, I had to take it would have been foolish not to take the opportunity to go over. And I completely wrecked my braid on this track, because I was struggling to pick up power, basically, from this track. And I went around this track with my cloth and lighter fluid and cleaned all the copper tape rails, thinking that that might have been my problem. Dirty braids. I was toothbrushing my braids with lighter fluid on there to knock out what fluff and dust had gathered in there. And when I got home, I needed new braids on my car because they had burned away so thin that the only thing that I did Saturday night overnight was change the guide for a different guide, a guide that had arrived in the mail that day, not the one that I'd basically built the car around, and put new braid. It turned out the problem was all about my guide depth. And it was not this track that I identified it on, although I was almost certainly suffering on here. It was the farmyard track, which was also wood, that really highlighted it to me. And that's when we shaved the guide, and suddenly we got a car that we could really run, which we'd struggled with throughout practice, to be quite honest. I don't know whether that car was produced in that weathered condition, but it certainly looks weathered. And that's on the hairpin of the hill climb. Quite a nice car. A couple of pictures of that one. Really liked the Fords. They looked good. I don't know whether they were Scalextric or SCX. One Ford Puma that I was running with was definitely an SCX. And I was particularly interested in that car because it was a similar size to mine. It was in the modern category. It was a similar size to mine in terms of guide lead and wheelbases and everything like that. And I was particularly interested in how that car ran because it was the closest thing to what I was running in my group. That isn't water. I know it looks wet, but it is a resin. And yes, it's a little more slippery than most of the track, but it's made to look like water, and it really does it well because there's a fountain running down that wall, And I found this on someone's pit table, bearing in mind there's very, very little in terms of maintenance. Cars are just going around the rooms in a tray, and people are carrying the controllers from stage to stage. But this was a very committed level of fast tuning, shall we say, that I saw one competitor, and I didn't actually see him using it. I just saw this on the bench, and I didn't get time to talk about it. But wow, what a thing to have built specifically to go rallying with start speed adjustments, maximum speed limitations, brakes on and off, all that kind of thing, various levels of braking. Now, obviously, I've got all of that because all of that was in my True Speed controller that I was using, and we did use it. We used it to change the way that the car braked. We turned the brakes up for faster tracks and down for ones that you just kept rolling. We changed the maximum speed. We turned that quite a long way down on certain layouts that were particularly slow. Turned that up full for the faster ones. It was really useful tool to have, particularly when I've got like my 10-year-old driving the car who hasn't yet developed as much of the mid-range control that I have. But yeah, that's what was available to purchase. Staff Slot Cars are obviously a UK distributor for Avant Slot, and they've got a lot of didn't actually take many pictures of cars in boxes, but they've got a lot of Avant Slot cars lying around. They do a pretty good range of rally cars I didn't know anything about. And obviously we've got the wheels, their main product. These were the results as published. And this was the classic class. And what you will see here is some names that you know. John Underwood, who joins the chat quite often, or has done in the past. And Gareth Jones is also a DISCA racer, digital slot car racer. I know him well. Didn't see John driving his cars at all. He was in a different group to me. Although Gareth was in the same group as myself, and I was constantly benchmarking against Gareth with Gareth's cars and my car, etc., and trying my best to keep up with Gareth if I possibly could. That turned out to be a very fortuitous thing to do, because Gareth, as you can see, won this category, and he actually won all three. The next category, I can't see the top of my screen. What does it say? The 80s, 90s? Yes, I guess it does, looking at the cars. A nice variety of cars, all sorts of things from different manufacturers. SRC is particularly popular. Yeah, a Ninko here look, unobtainium, well, probably not unobtainium, but, you know, out of production cars. Nice variety of cars. As you can see, all the stages added together added up to, this is done in seconds, so that's about 5.5 minutes for all the stages added together. And although these are all the individual stage times, and as you can see, Icy Hills is the one that was longest. Lots of stages around the 50-odd second mark, as you can see here, and the Forest Quarry is as long as it is, and that was about 40-odd to 50 seconds for most people. And then the one of interest for me in particular, because it's got me and my boy in it, was the modern category, and I managed to get a 6th place finish. And there's Gareth again doing his thing at the front, and John also doing his thing at the front. And my Achilles heel was that icy stage where it took 92 seconds for me to get around. That's 1:32. And as you can see, that was the one where I was most not competitive. Most people doing 60, 70 seconds. With regards to the best performances, I think the Think Scalextric stage, and I can't see where it is, one of these over here, 30-something seconds. Where am I? 49, 92. Is it this one? Think Scalextric, the Scalextric stage. Looking at that, that's particularly competitive. I don't know if it's quickest, it might be second quickest. I think I was second and third quickest on the Ninko circuit or the Ninko layouts. Again, a surface I'm familiar with, except for that bumpy stuff. But those I had practiced, and my guide wasn't too deep for those and things like that. So yeah, I managed 367 seconds, 6 minutes and 7 seconds for the whole thing. And I don't know if I've got any more pictures. Oh yes, I've got a few of people collecting prizes. That was John. That's Gareth. You don't know Gareth, but you do know John. That's Scott, the organizer of the club. He won one of the categories. I think it was, he won fastest SCX in standard form. And there's another one for fastest Scalextric in standard form. And I think that's that one. Yes, it says so on the trophy. And yeah, we've got some second place winners and third place winners, etc. And then these are Gareth's cars. These are the cars that won. We've got the SRC. I think this, I don't actually know what this one is. Could this be Scale Auto? and that's a Di Tommaso Pantera, that's a Peugeot 208 and a Lancia Delta S4. And I have actually got a video where I interviewed Gareth and talked about his cars, how he configured them, what he changed on them on my YouTube channel at the moment. It turns out that the wood tracks are particularly dusty, and they always seem to remain that way. They did clean up to some extent, but the technique that I was applying was to perpetually clean the tires and clean the braids, because we were picking up quite a bit of muck in the early stages. Not at all from the Ninco tracks, but from anything that was wood tracks. It was like James ran his section, and then I would run away with the car. And sometimes that would mean taking it downstairs, popping it on my power track with a damp cloth with lighter fluid, quickly swizzing the rear tires with the cloth, and then set off back upstairs to the stage in time for myself to run the stage with the car, and then do that all again, and then move on and move on. And I think as the day progressed, where I was persistently cleaning the tires, I actually managed to begin to soften them. And the last stage that I run was the Forest Hills stage, in both directions, which was obviously adjacent to my pit space. But yeah, I really spoilt the tires. I think by the end, most people weren't using anything like lighter fluid. They were just using a roll of tape. I wasn't actually carrying a roll of tape. I managed to use some people's rolls of tape from time to time when they weren't really keeping their eye on them. But it seemed to me that you really needed a very dry tire, and not a very sticky tire. It's strange because sticky tires just seem to pick up dust very quickly and make the car change quite significantly. You could get, in some cases, 2 or 3 laps where the clean tires helped, but then they would go off drastically. And then the people with dry tires, and it turns out that these cars have got a rally tire on them, or 2 of them have. These 2 here had got a Mitus branded rally tire with a tread on it, which was clearly the best at rejecting the dust, or working through the dust, shall we say. I think that's the end of the pictures. Oh, yes. So we came home from that, and this week we have cleared what we can, folded the dining table, and that's my boy enjoying the Spawn Green stages. And that's what's set up right now on the floor in front of me.
There you go.
Thanks for your attention. Any questions?
26:15.
I'm sorry?
26 minutes and 15 seconds.
Oy vey. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Wayne. All right, well, at this point, the floor is open. Anybody has anything they want to share or ask or talk or whatever?
Things they'd like to see?
Things they'd like to see. Yeah, that was the perpetual topic. What you got, Dewan?
I know that I recall Dennis outlining some of the techniques that he used for setting up his NSR F1 cars. And I don't know if you can see the bottom of this very well, but the screws have an option of being here or in here. I have mine here, obviously, and took the ones out of here. I have two F1s. Oh, this other one. And this one was set up with the screws in the back. This one was set up with the screws in the middle. And this one was getting 6 laps more than the other one. So I was trying to. I went and changed them around. So the white car also has the same thing. But one of my questions is, is there such thing as too much body float? And B, what are some of the characteristic differences in putting the screws into this location versus this location?
Well, I would say that putting the screws, it depends on the track, right? You need to do what you did and test it. And on any particular track, on any particular day, one may be better than the other, and then use that. Personally, I like them at the back, but then I'm really only running either my home track or I'm running at Electric Dreams, and that's it. And I'm running where there's high bite, and maybe on some other tracks there's not quite so much bite, and then they may work better in the forward position. I just find that the car is more predictable and less prone to chatter when the screws are at the back. But as I say, yeah, the stopwatch will tell you.
And is there such a thing as too much body float?
I don't. Some people will say no. I think yes. I think there can be too much, because I think eventually on certain tracks, the amount of body movement is going to start upsetting the way the car handles. I would say on faster tracks, you probably need to have a little less. But I see some of the guys at Electric Dreams having 2 to 3 millimeter or 3 to 4 millimeters of vertical movement on the body. And the cars seem to be very smooth and very nice. And, you've got to be sure that the body's, if it's floating like that, that it's not affecting anything. And sometimes you need a fair amount of float so that it doesn't affect whatever flexibilities in the frame. But again, it's something that's quite simple to screw it in, try the car, back them out half a turn, try the car, back it out another half turn, try the car, back it out another half turn, see what it's doing. In the long run, all of these things are all dependent on how the car reacts to the way that you drive it, and how the car handles on the particular track that you're on for the day.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think a lot of it is to do with how you drive it, because there are some guys in my club where I would swear that the body wasn't even attached with how much float
to have. Yeah,
it has. It's like, really, but okay, that's what they do, and they do good, or they do well, or they do okay. Yeah, it depends, right? As Chris would say, as anybody would say, it depends.
The perfect consultant answer is depends.
It depends, exactly. All right, Jeremy's got his hand up, and then we got Garth.
I just have a quick question. Usually on FF motors, I use a plastic pinion, but I got some metal pinions. And when I went to press it on, I must have bent something because it's got a closed can at the end. Is there a better way to put metal pinions on FF motors so that you don't bind them up inside?
Is it completely bound up?
Well, it barely turns now, so I don't know. Yeah, I think it's okay. It's only a cheap little $7 motor, but going forward, I'd like to. I'm trying to think. Is there like a rig you put on top of this to like? Do I want to press on the can part of it and press down?
I would say so.
Did you have the right spacer on your?
I don't even have a spacer on mine. What's that look like?
That's why.
Okay.
That's why. There's a little spacer that's on here that works with that closed end bell.
Okay. Well, that explains a few things. Yeah, I didn't get one of those with mine.
Which one is that, Courtney? Is that the?
It's with the slot invasion.
Slot invasion.
Okay.
Jeremy, I would get that motor in my hand and hit the end of the armature with it and just redent the can back the other way.
Mm-hmm.
I think that spacer is an option. You have to order it separately.
Oh, do you? Okay. Yeah. Well, Courtney, maybe you can send me the dimensions later, and I'll 3D print one or something.
Jeremy, try one of the round magnets on the end of the can.
Jeremy, just measure your motor and make it fit over the screw-in part.
Yeah, you've got the bearing carrier in the motor can, haven't you? You've got the diameter.
But does that spacer then push on the outside part of the can? It doesn't push on that middle section of the can, I assume.
Does not push on the bearing, pushes on the edge.
Okay. I'll come up with a little spacer and I'll 3D print something. I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, have Garth draw it in CAD and
yeah.
Basically, you want the pressure, the other side of the tool should be pushing on the can, not the little center bump.
Yeah. Okay. I'll make a little jig for that then. Cool. Thank you guys. I knew there was something I was missing. Go ahead, Garth.
Some of you may remember Al Penrose. He used to do a pinion for the FFs. It was a slide fit, it's a clearance fit, and you just bonded on with a bit of Loctite. Keyed up the shaft and then just put a bit of Loctite on it.
Well, Slot makes a 1.5 millimeter now, so it's just easier. It was just easier to buy those. But all right.
And MR Slot does too.
Yeah.
Okay. I've got a little reamer, and I just ream that out to the slide fit of the 1.5 millimeter shaft, and once again just use a bit of Loctite on it after you keyed the shaft up.
You use Loctite like 648 or one of those, the green one.
Yeah,
that stuff never lets go.
Yeah, I've got pinions that have been on there for years.
Yeah, most pretty much all of my brushless motors have pinions that are held on with Loctite.
Then you don't have to use the presser to slide it on where you want it, and then just put a little dab of Loctite on a toothpick. That'll wick in, and away you go. Let it set, and away you go.
Is that because you can't put the brushless motors into the pinion push, then, Dennis, that you're doing it that way?
Oh, I decided I didn't want the heat of soldering the pinions on, and all of the motors that I've got them on are motors that have there are pinions that are slide fit anyway.
Yeah.
Alrighty, Garth, what you got?
I just have a question. And I think both Jeremy and I have the same question. Does anybody know what the best tool for a slot.it set screw is as far as hardness goes? Now I use a Wera, but even with a Wera, okay, it has a tendency to get a little wonky after a long period of time. So what is the best manufactured one for hardness? Okay.
I would say a Rockwell 56-4 would probably do it. And I'm just making that up. I've had good luck with this little one, the Intigi.
Yeah, I got a Skill Auto one that looks just like that.
And that's a 0.9 millimeter. Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. I've used the tips from Slot Car Corner. They're pretty good. And if you can find one from Hoodie, they are the best.
Garth, are your grub screws getting worn?
No, I broke my tip off mine finally, and then I grabbed the little cheap ones that come with Slot It, and I've been fighting with this little cheap thing I keep shaving it off, trying it, getting one turn out of it, shaving it off, and I'm like, why do they even include these at this point? It's pointless.
Their keys are super soft and undersized.
Yep.
Yeah. So the Hoodie ones are good, and the Slot Car Corner ones are good, and probably Slotting Plus have one as well. That's probably pretty nice, I would think. I'll check.
Oh, well, Dewan's waving around what he's proud of. What you got, Dewan?
Those are Weras.
Yeah, I got those too.
Yeah,
me too.
Are those hardened steel tips then, or not?
Yeah, they're pretty. They're
pretty good.
It's pretty good. It's just that I have one that gets a lot of use, and I have switched from when I first started doing it. I used to use stainless steel set screws, but I found, and this is just my experience, I found that by far most of the black oxide set screws are actually harder than the stainless steel ones.
Oh yeah, they are a lot.
Yeah, and so I've switched over to the black screws, but in my Wera, you know, it gets a little worn and I can sand the tip of it and then, you know, brush it up with a wire brush and it's okay. But I was just wondering if there was any that are really, you know, high quality ones out there. You know.
And that's why you get them claiming to be 0.95, don't you?
If you're wearing out Wera tools, I'm like, what?
Well, I actually am not wearing out Wera tools. I'm just more curious to know if there's actually something that's even harder than a Wera tool, because Wera is, I'm not, you know, don't get me wrong, I don't want to say anything bad about the Wera because, you know, it's more the operator than it is the tool, I'm sure.
You know what? It's fair because you know, sometimes a company will rest on their name in a bad way. So
I can tell you that the Electric Dream sells a wrench, a double-sided wrench that has the 50 thousandths on one end and the 35 thousandths on the other, and those tips are really good because they're ground for us from drill blanks, so they're really tough, but they break if you're not careful.
Yeah,
but those work pretty well.
Is that the one?
I've been using this one from SRC for about 2 years now, double-ended, and it works great.
And those tips are replaceable on that? Or?
Yes.
Yes.
So you can just buy the tips then?
Yes.
Okay. And that's,
don't get anything with a large diameter handle.
And it depends too on the way you use the tool, in that the double-sided ones, some people swear at them and some people swear by them. Depends on it.
You gotta learn.
Yeah, it depends on how you hold your wrench. If you hold it in a certain position, then the tip grinds into your palm and you throw the thing away, the first trash can you find. So it depends on you.
If somebody just comes into this conversation, we got some explaining to do.
Yep. All right, we got 3 minutes. Anybody else got anything they want to ask about, or?
Just to say to Garth, I sent you a message in the chat about the sizes of the various brushless boards.
I saw that, Dennis. I do have one question. Do you know what the size of the KC Racing one?
KC Racing stocked the Westrock board, the New Zealand board.
Okay, so it's the same as the Westbrook. Okay.
Yeah, it is a Westrock board. It's not even the same. It is a Westrock board. They don't have their own board.
And maybe I'm wrong, but looking at the KC website, I think that the most likely motor / board to get to use in a slot.it-car is going to be that motor, that 28K motor that they have. Or most, at least the most available to people that, you know, might want to try it.
I think if you look on KC Racing right now at their brushless stuff, the only ones that they have are the only motors that they have out there are the stuff for drag racing. And so a couple of things about that. First off, 2800 kV is not way more, but it's more than a 1/32 scale slot car is going to handle, because that's 2800 RPM per volt. So you're looking at times 12 or times 10 even, you're looking at 28,000 RPM motor at 10 volts. That's the first thing. The second thing is that particular motor is much bigger. It's a different size. It's not this. It's a 1404, which means that the stator is 14 millimeter diameter, which means that the outside of that thing is going to be like about 18 millimeters diameter, and that's bigger than most of the motors that we're using right now.
Well, the one that the pod is centered around was the motor. The diagram that I used that Jeremy gave me was a 14 0.03 diameter for the motor diameter. Okay.
Yeah, which
That-
means that
1104?
it's a probably that'll be an 11 series motor, 1106 or 1105 motor.
And of KC, you mean, is that?
No, on anybody's motors, that designation is a standard designation for all kinds of brushless motors. So, like an 1104, for instance, the stator, the stationary inside piece is 11 millimeters diameter and the laminations are 4 millimeters long, and then the outside of that brings it up to a 14.8 or just under 15 millimeter motor on the outside. So those 1404s that are showing on their website at the moment are going to be like nearly 18 millimeters diameter on the outside.
Ooh.
And that is bigger than anything I've tried.
All right, and on that,
So
we're going to end the stream and keep talking as usual until next week. Everybody wave bye.
Bye.
Bye. Stream ended.